The colossal underwater behemoth of the Soviet Union became a grim symbol of fear during the Cold War era. Imagine the silent darkness and the chilling stillness of the northern depths of the Barents Sea. An American sonar operator, intently listening through his headphones, watches the screens. His fingers tremble slightly as he picks up an acoustic signal, a contact whose very existence seems utterly impossible. The detection is too massive for an ordinary submarine. The lines on the oscilloscope surge upward, sketching the outline of a true giant, unlike anything else in the world. Believing it must be an error, the operator immediately recalibrates his equipment. But soon, the sound returns. This is not a surface vessel. It is not a school of whales. This is something entirely different. A second of strained silence hangs in the compartment, followed by a brief, urgent report to the officer. An object of incredible size has been detected in the northern latitudes. This was the moment the world first felt the powerful breath of the monster that the Soviet Union was secretly forging in the deep. Sound transitioned to tense, geopolitical music. By the mid-70s, tensions between the United States and the USSR had reached a critical point. Any new vessel, satellite, or missile could drastically shift the global balance of power. At the time, Americans felt confident. Their nuclear missile submarines, hiding in the deep oceans, guaranteed a devastating retaliatory strike. They were convinced that strategic maritime superiority was firmly on their side, even in the event of a surprise attack. But Moscow held a different view. The Soviet leadership realized that the stealth of the American subfleet could be neutralized in another way, by creating a symbol of military might so enormous that its mere existence would become a weapon of intimidation. When the first fragments of intelligence about gigantic holes on the slipways of the Sevmash plant began to leak through intelligence channels, panic flared in the West. Spy satellite images only fueled the widespread fear. Something was being built in the shipyards that surpassed the size of any existing submarine. Experts fiercely debated whether such a behemoth could even be built. Meanwhile, NATO generals were already calculating scenarios in which a giant, hiding under the Arctic ice, could erase hundreds of cities from the map. The American operator, who nervously removed his headphones after the echo from the deep, didn't know the full details. But it was his alarming report that began the legend. The legend of an incredible underwater colossus that turned the cold waters of the Barents Sea into the arena of the Cold War's most dangerous confrontation. The second half of the 20th century transformed the world's oceans into a vast field of invisible battle, where the outcome of the confrontation between the two superpowers was effectively decided. For the United States, submarine forces were not just a part of the fleet. They were both the main shield and the strategic sword. Their nuclear missile carriers, dubbed boomers by the Americans, could patrol the most remote parts of the ocean for months. These submarines had the unique ability to deliver a crushing retaliatory strike from anywhere on the globe. This was their key advantage: global reach, absolute stealth, and readiness for instant retaliation. American military doctrine was built on a simple, ruthless principle. If anyone dared to destroy the U.S. in a sudden attack, the missile carriers remaining underwater would still launch nuclear salvos, reducing the attacking nation to ashes. This established the system of mutually assured destruction, which kept the world from global catastrophe for decades. Nuclear attack submarines, the Hunters, performed another, equally vital task. They tracked Soviet boats, gathered intelligence, and provided cover for carrier battle groups, turning the ocean into a continuous hunting ground. The Soviet Union, by contrast, operated based on different realities. The country's geographic position and military objectives dictated a specific approach. The USSR was surrounded by the powerful forces of the North Atlantic Alliance, and venturing into the open ocean was always fraught with enormous risk. Admiral Gorshkov developed a strategy in which submarines became not just weapons of retribution, but a reliable bastion of defense near Soviet shores. Soviet missile carriers stayed closer to the so-called Arctic bastions, protected zones covered by air support, surface ships, and other submarines. It was there, under the thick ice, that they found safe refuge from American hunters. Soviet doctrine focused primarily on destroying carrier strike groups, which were considered the main means of pressure from the United States. Since these floating fortresses could threaten both coastal cities and military bases deep inside the country, the USSR developed cruise missile submarines designed to punch through strong defenses and destroy aircraft carriers. Thus, two diametrically opposed approaches were formed. The Americans sought to control the oceans, relying on a global network of stealth patrols. The Soviet Union concentrated on strengthening its own bastions and creating a weapon capable of destroying the enemy's most expensive and dangerous ships. This strategic difference spurred the USSR to create an unprecedented project, one whose very presence would force the world to acknowledge Soviet might. The answer was the birth of a project that would forever change the tactics of submarine warfare. At the very beginning of the underwater arms race, the Soviet Union was forced to act on an extremely tight schedule. While American missile carriers were already confidently patrolling the oceans, Moscow was only taking its first steps. This led to the creation of the Hotel Project, the first Soviet nuclear submarines equipped with ballistic missiles. They were based on the experience gained from diesel submarines and had only 3 missile silos. However, their main drawback was critical. To launch, the ship had to surface. At that moment, it became extremely vulnerable to detection and destruction by any NATO reconnaissance plane or ship. The next stage involved a project whose boats gained the ability to launch missiles from underwater, a massive technological leap. The Soviet Union had acquired a genuine nuclear shield that could not be taken out with one precise strike. These ships carried 16 silos, and each missile had the potential to hit targets within the United States. However, the main flaw of these submarines remained their excessive noise, their Achilles heel. American hunters often relentlessly tracked them, recording every sound, and the Soviet crews frequently complained of feeling cornered. Then came the era of the Deltas, a whole family of modernized missile cruisers. They formed the robust backbone of the Soviet nuclear submarine forces. The Deltas were equipped with long-range missiles, could operate effectively in harsh Arctic conditions, and were much better suited for long combat patrols. These ships commanded respect even from potential adversaries, but they still had a significant problem. Their level of stealth remained inferior to American designs. NATO submarines, equipped with the latest acoustic systems, could still shadow the Soviet boats. Every step forward in the USSR felt like a race for survival. They closed the missile gap, but lost the advantage in noise reduction. They increased range, but lost in stealth. Moscow realized that to truly change the rules of the game, they needed not just to catch up, but to create something so colossal that its very existence would serve as an absolute deterrent. Thus, the idea of the Typhoon gradually matured, a legendary project destined to become not only a weapon, but a symbol of the era. In the late 70s, a fateful decision was made in the Kremlin. The Soviet Union abandoned the endless pursuit of the US in submarine technology, tried to make boats quieter or smaller. Instead, a daring and brilliant concept was born. Build a monster whose sheer scale alone would render any attempt by the enemy to approach it meaningless. The Rubin Design Bureau in Leningrad was given a task that sounded almost fantastical: to create a submarine capable of withstanding a nuclear strike, hiding for months under the Arctic ice, and carrying an arsenal sufficient to destroy entire continents. At the Sevmash slipways in Severodvinsk, the most highly classified work began. Shipbuilders saw a hull of unprecedented dimensions, and even among the workers, rumors circulated that this was not an ordinary submarine, but some new, top-secret project that no one should know about. Huge sections were assembled in sheltered workshops, but hiding construction on such a scale proved impossible. Soon, American spy satellites captured blurry, yet frightening, images. A submarine behemoth was growing on the slipway, surpassing everything ever built in the world. Panic erupted in NATO headquarters. Analysts peered the photographs and could not believe it. The boat was wider than any known model, Its hull appeared to be twin-hulled, and massive silos, more like fortress towers, rose in the center. The Pentagon debated scenarios in which the USSR gained a doomsday weapon. If each of those silos could hold a missile, they were talking about dozens of warheads capable of wiping cities off the map. In the West, this project received the code name Typhoon. In the Soviet Union, it was designated by the dry term Project 941 Akula, shark. But hidden beneath those words was a giant that shattered all concepts of underwater forces. When the first rumors of its size leaked into the world press, it became clear to everyone. A new symbol of the Cold War had emerged, destined to become a nightmare for intelligence and a perpetual challenge to American admirals. Imagine a steel behemoth, nearly 180 meters long, with a submerged displacement of over 48,000 tons. Nothing like it had ever been built before or since. This wasn't just a submarine, it was an underwater city designed to hide beneath the thick ice of the Arctic Ocean. The key feature of the Typhoon class lay in its unique construction. Instead of a single pressure hull, the engineers at the Rubin Design Bureau decided to use two massive, robust cylinders placed side by side, with a powerful missile compartment bridging the space between them. This ingenious solution gave the submarine incredible survivability. Even if one hull was damaged, the second could keep the vessel afloat. This dual-hull system provided engineers with an unprecedented amount of internal space. Officers and sailors didn't live in cramped quarters, but in relative comfort. For the first time in history, the crew of a nuclear submarine enjoyed amenities that sailors on other fleets could only dream of. The Typhoon featured a swimming pool, perfect for a dip after an exhausting shift, a sauna for stress relief, and a gymnasium where submariners could maintain peak physical condition during long deployments. The crew could remain underwater for up to 120 days, living in conditions that helped maintain morale and mental resilience. The size of the Typhoon allowed for enormous reserves of provisions, modern medical facilities, and spacious command sections equipped with the latest technology of the era. Even the most skeptical foreign observers admitted that this level of commitment to crew comfort was unmatched in any other submarine fleet. But the main thing that terrified the West were the 20 vertical missile silos, towering over the double hull like the spires of an ancient Kremlin. Each of these steel monsters weighed nearly 100 tons and could carry a dozen nuclear warheads. This transformed the Typhoon into a mobile doomsday arsenal, capable of hiding under the eternal ice, making it virtually impossible to destroy with a first strike. When early reports of a swimming pool and a sauna reached American analysts, they simply refused to believe it. Yet, for the Soviet Union, this was a matter of principle. Sailors needed to stay on combat duty for months, meaning the submarine had to be their home deep beneath the waves. The Typhoon became a symbol that the USSR could not only build the most powerful weapons, but also ensure decent living conditions for its personnel, even on the brink of global destruction. The Typhoon's arsenal stunned even the most seasoned military analysts. At the center of this underwater giant were 20 silos for the R-39 ballistic missiles. Each missile was a true behemoth, nearly 17 meters long and weighing over 90 tons. They resembled space launch vehicles more than conventional submarine weapons. But it was these colossal missiles that made the Typhoon the ultimate weapon of doomsday. Each R-39 missile could carry up to 10 independently targetable warheads. The yield of each nuclear payload was around 100 kilotons, more than enough to obliterate a major city. A single, full salvo from the submarine meant hitting 200 potential targets at a range exceeding 8,000 kilometers. Hidden in the Arctic ice, this strategic submarine could unleash a firestorm upon any part of the United States or Europe with a push of a button. The missile launch system itself was a unique feat of engineering, the Soviet Cold Launch System. The missile was first ejected from the silo by a powerful surge of gas, and only after clearing the water did its own engines ignite. This method prevented potential damage to the submarine's pressure hull and significantly increased launch reliability. Thanks to the reinforced missile compartment and a specially designed reinforced bow, the Typhoon-class cruiser could even breach thick Arctic ice, transforming the frozen wilderness into a perfect launch platform for a nuclear strike. But this underwater giant was not vulnerable at close range either. The bow section housed six 533mm torpedo tubes. These could fire standard anti-ship and anti-submarine torpedoes, as well as specialized decoys and noise generators designed to effectively confuse and divert enemy torpedoes. The Typhoon was not just a strategic nuclear arsenal. It was a powerful, self-defending fortress. The Typhoon operated under a distinct philosophy compared to its American counterparts, such as the Ohio-class boats, which carried 24 more accurate and longer-range Trident missiles. The Typhoon was not designed to sneak close to enemy shores. Its primary mission was to endure, survive the initial strike, and guarantee a devastating retaliatory response. It was a submerged bastion, symbolizing the Soviet Union's ability to strike back even under the most destructive circumstances. In the deadly silence of the deep, two military philosophies clashed. The American side focused on stealth. Ohio and Los Angeles-class attack submarines would melt into the acoustic shadow, relying on absolute silence and acoustic superiority to remain undetected until the moment of attack. Americans believed invisibility made their weapons unbeatable. The Soviet Union chose a different path. The Typhoon was no ghost. It was a steel, virtually invulnerable fortress. Its dual-hull construction provided a massive reserve of buoyancy, turning the vessel into an unsinkable bastion. Soviet engineers deliberately sacrificed silence for maximum survivability. The submarine might be noisier than its American rivals, but it could withstand damage that would instantly tear any other vessel apart. A silent war was fought beneath the Arctic ice. Typhoons patrolled strategic bastions, protected areas of the Barents Sea, covered by air support, surface fleets, and other submarine forces. Even there, American hunter-killers attempted to track them. Los Angeles and later Seawolf-class boats risked penetrating these waters, engaging in a deadly game of cat and mouse. At stake was not just the luck of the submariners, but the fate of the entire world, as one wrong maneuver or accidental contact could trigger a nuclear exchange that would end civilization. Soviet commanders knew the enemy was always nearby. Sometimes hydroacoustics would pick up a faint propeller noise astern, a sure sign that an American submarine was tracking them. In those moments, the crew would freeze, try not to make a sound, aware they were in the crosshairs. Simultaneously, American sailors lived in equal fear. The Typhoon could suddenly breach the ice and launch a salvo that was impossible to defend against. Scene 8. Post-Soviet decline and decommissioning. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the fate of these submarine giants became uncertain. Maintaining such colossal machines was an unbearable burden on the weakened economy. The operation of the Typhoons required immense financial investment. Large crews, maintenance of gigantic reactors, and dozens of complex systems, all requiring funds that simply did not exist in the 1990s. A paradoxical program emerged. Under nuclear arms reduction agreements, the United States collaborated with Russia to finance the decommissioning of these giants. The very nation that had feared the Typhoon for decades was now funding its dismantling. American money went towards cutting the missile silos, removing nuclear fuel, and ensuring reactor safety. The massive hulls were cut with torches right on the docks, and images of the greatest weapon of the Cold War being dismantled circled the globe. One by one, 6 built ships were scrapped. However, one giant managed to survive, submarine TK-208, renamed Dmitry Donskoy. It was destined to last longer than the rest of the Typhoons. The vessel was converted into a testing platform for the new Bulava ballistic missiles, thus becoming the foundation for Russia's future underwater nuclear deterrent system. For many years, the Donskoy sailed not as a fearsome city killer, but as a testbed where engineers and officers refined cutting-edge technology. Yet, the sheer fact of its existence continued to stir the imagination. At naval parades, it appeared as a majestic symbol of a bygone era, allowing thousands to witness the colossus that was, until recently, considered the most terrifying weapon on the planet. By the late 2000s, it became clear that maintaining such a behemoth solely for testing was too expensive even for Russia. The fate of the Donskoy was debated for a long time. Veterans proposed turning it into a museum, but officials hesitated. Keeping such a massive vessel active was not only costly, but technically challenging. In February 2023, official confirmation arrived. The Dmitry Donskoy, the last of the giants, was officially retired from a fleet. Quietly, and without major fanfare, an entire era ended. The ship had remained afloat for over 40 years, surviving the collapse of superpower, reforms, and new conflicts. Now, it awaits the slow and lengthy process of disposal. Disassembling such a massive machine is proving to be as complex as building it. Two nuclear reactors require cautious fuel extraction, hulls need careful cutting, and radioactive compartments demand complex, multi-stage isolation. This process will take years. This ship was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of Soviet power, will, and the capacity to challenge the world. Even if this colossus eventually goes to scrap metal, its memory will last forever. The Typhoon became a legend that terrified enemies and inspired awe in allies for decades. It was a ship unparalleled in any ocean. It never engaged in direct combat, nor fired its nuclear salvos. Yet its mere presence altered the global balance of power. Today, the Typhoons have been succeeded by new submarines, quieter, more compact, and more technologically advanced. But they lack that aura of terror and majesty. The Typhoon will forever be remembered as the underwater monster of the deep, the submerged city built by people who believed that only absolute power could truly protect their nation.